The coldest goodbye. The day we buried my father, the wind cut through the cemetery like a knife, an unseasonable chill for late October. I stood at the edge of his grave, my coat pulled tight against the cold, watching as mourners placed white roses atop his polished mahogany casket. Each petal seemed to mock me, a silent testament to the lies that had woven through his 63 years. My sister Veronica Kane clung to her husband's arm. Her sleek black designer gown and flawless makeup a sharp contrast to my plain wool skirt and sweater. Even at Dad's funeral she had to shine, a glittering star in a sea of grief. "He should have had a will," Veronica whispered to her husband, her voice carrying just far enough for me to hear. "Now everything's going to be a mess." I closed my eyes, trying to drown her out. Trust Veronica to think of money while we stood over our father's fresh grave. But she wasn't wrong. Without a will, Dad's empire, Kane Development, the sprawling construction company he'd built from nothing, our childhood estate, his stocks, all of it hung in limbo, a legal nightmare waiting to unfold. My name is Emily Harper, and until 3 weeks ago I thought I knew my family. I was the quiet one, the daughter who turned her back on the glittering world of Kane Development to teach history at Lincoln High School. Veronica, though, she was the golden child, the one who'd gone to Wharton, who'd shadowed Dad since she could decipher a blueprint. She was his right hand, his legacy, or so everyone thought. Emily. My mother's voice broke through my thoughts. She stood beside me, elegant even in mourning, her silver hair swept into a perfect chignon. "Come with me for a moment, dear." We walked away from the crowd, past rows of weathered tombstones, until we stopped beneath a towering oak. Her hands trembled as she reached into her purse and pulled out a cream-colored envelope, sealed with wax and bearing the imprint of Dad's old signet ring. "Your father wanted you to have this," she whispered, pressing it into my hands. "Open it when you're alone." "And Emily," she hesitated, her eyes locking with mine. "Whatever you read, remember he loved you." Before I could ask anything, she turned and walked back to the funeral, leaving me clutching an envelope that felt heavier than stone. The wake was held at our family home, a grand Victorian mansion Dad had restored with his own hands. I watched Veronica hold court in the living room, regaling relatives with tales of working beside Dad, her voice dripping with confidence. "Of course, I'll take over Kane Development," she said, as if it were a foregone conclusion. Our aunts and uncles nodded approvingly. Naturally, Veronica would inherit the throne. "Emily, darling," Aunt Clara approached, a martini dangling from her manicured fingers. "I hope you're not too worried about all this. Veronica will take care of you." I forced a smile, feeling the envelope burn in my purse. "I'm fine, Aunt Clara. I have my own life, my own career." "Yes, teaching," she said with a faint sniff. "Admirable, I suppose. Though your father always hoped you'd join the business." I excused myself and slipped away to Dad's study, the one place in the house that still felt like him. His leather chair bore the imprint of his broad frame. His reading glasses rested atop a stack of contracts, as if he'd only stepped out for a coffee. I pulled the envelope from my purse, my hands shaking as I broke the wax seal. Inside were several pages of Dad's bold handwriting. "My dearest Emily," the letter began. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and it's time you knew the truth about our family's legacy, and why I've spent my life shielding you from it." My breath caught as I read on, each word a hammer blow. This couldn't be real. But as the pages unfolded, fragments of my childhood snapped into place, hushed arguments I'd overheard, late-night meetings Dad dismissed as business, his insistence that I stay far from Kane Development. A sharp knock jolted me. "Emily." Veronica's voice sliced through the door. "What are you doing in Dad's study? The lawyers are here about the estate." I folded the letter hastily and shoved it back into my purse. "Coming," I called, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. In the living room, our family lawyer, Mr. Grayson, was unpacking his briefcase. Veronica sat poised, her smile smug, oblivious to the bomb ticking in my hands. "Since Mr. Kane died intestate," Grayson began, adjusting his glasses, "state law will dictate the distribution of assets. Kane Development is the primary concern." I tuned him out, watching Veronica's self-assured nod. She had no idea what was coming. Dad's letter had rewritten everything, about the company, about what Veronica had done, about why there'd never been a will. The afternoon dragged on, Grayson droning about legalities while Veronica scribbled notes on her tablet, occasionally tossing me pitying glances. If she only knew. As the last guest trickled out, Mom caught my eye across the room. Her look said it all. She knew what was in that letter, knew the chaos it would unleash. I was halfway to the door when Veronica stopped me. "Emily, we need to talk about the company. I know you've never cared about the business, but we should discuss your shares. I'm thinking of buying you out, fairly of course." I met her gaze, seeing the ambition Dad had warned me about. "We'll talk soon, Veronica," I said softly. "There's a lot to discuss." That night driving home, Dad's final words echoed in my mind. "The truth will cost us everything, Emily, but it's time for justice. You're the only one I trust to make it right." Tomorrow I'd start digging. Tomorrow, I'd unravel the lies that propped up our family's fortune. But tonight I mourned not just Dad's death, but the burden he'd carried, protecting me while watching his dream twist into a nightmare. The next morning I spread Dad's letter across my kitchen table, surrounded by newspaper clippings I'd pulled from the archives. Kane Development was a local legend. How Robert Kane turned a modest contracting outfit into a titan of real estate, reshaping skylines across the state. But Dad's letter told a darker tale. "Our success came at a price I never meant to pay," he wrote. "When the accident happened at the Westfield Towers in 2018, I thought it was a tragedy. Then I found Veronica's files. I opened my laptop, pulling up articles about Westfield Towers. 3 workers had died when a crane collapsed during construction of a high-rise condo. The investigation blamed faulty equipment. Kane Development paid hefty settlements, and the story faded. But Dad's letter painted a different picture. Veronica had known about the defective machinery months earlier. She'd buried safety reports, bribed inspectors, and pushed the project forward to meet deadlines. "The evidence is in my private safe," Dad wrote. "The combination is your birthday. Veronica would never guess it. Inside you'll find the reports, emails, proof of the payoffs. I've spent years trying to fix this quietly, but after what I uncovered about the new Harborfront project, I can't stay silent." My hand shook as I read the final lines. Dad had confronted Veronica days before his heart attack. The timing was no coincidence. My phone buzzed, a text from Veronica. "Meeting with lawyers at 2 p.m. Don't be late as usual." I stared at her words, remembering every time she dismissed me as the lesser sister. If she only knew what Dad had entrusted to me. At 1:55, I stepped into Kane Development's gleaming headquarters, the company name etched in gold across the lobby. Employees nodded as I passed. The boss's daughters were royalty here. In the conference room, Veronica sat at Dad's old chair, Mom beside her, lawyers and execs filling the seats. "Emily, how nice of you to join us," Veronica said, her tone syrupy with disdain. "We've been discussing the transition. The board backs me fully. Given your other interests, we're offering a generous buyout." Grayson slid a contract toward me. $5 million for your shares, Emily. Very fair, considering your lack of involvement. I picked it up, feigning interest. "Actually," I said, my voice low, "I won't be selling." The room stilled. Veronica's smile faltered. "Don't be ridiculous, Emily. You've never cared about construction. What could you possibly want with shares?" "I understand more than you think," I replied. "I'd like a full board meeting next week. There are matters Dad wanted addressed." "What matters?" Her voice sharpened. "The Westfield Towers for one," I said softly, "and the irregularities Dad found in the Harborfront plans." Veronica's face paled. Mom gasped. The lawyers shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know what you're talking about," Veronica snapped, but her hands betrayed her, trembling as she clutched her papers. "I think you do. The reports you buried, the bribes, and what really happened to Dad." She shot up, her chair crashing back. "This meeting's over. Everyone out, except my sister." As the room emptied, Mom lingered, tears in her eyes, then left us alone. Veronica's mask shattered. "Where did you get this?" "Dad left me a letter," I said, standing to meet her. "And a safe full of evidence. Did you think he didn't know about Westfield?" "You're bluffing," she hissed. "Dad would never." "The safe combination is my birthday," I cut in. "When's the last time you remembered it, Veronica? When's the last time you cared about anyone but yourself?" She lunged, grabbing my arm. Listen carefully, little sister. You don't know what you're stepping into. Take the money and walk away. This is your only warning. I yanked free. No, you listen. Next week I'm opening that safe. Everything you've built on lies will collapse. I stormed out, my heart pounding but my resolve ironclad. In my purse, my phone had recorded every word of her threat. Dad had taught me well, always keep proof. That night my phone rang. An unlisted number. Miss Harper, a man's voice asked. I'm Daniel Ruiz, site supervisor at Westfield until your sister fired me. I heard about your father's death. There's something you need to know. I'm listening, I said, grabbing a pen. The day before he died, your father came to me. He was gathering evidence, said he'd make things right. He asked me to testify if it came to it. Would you? I held my breath. A pause. Yes. Your father was a good man. What happened to him wasn't right. After we hung up, I sat in the dark, Dad's photo on my desk staring back at me. I had to finish what he'd started. 3 families had lost loved ones at Westfield. How many more would suffer if Veronica's greed went unchecked? At 6 a.m., I slipped into Kane Development's silent offices, taking the elevator to Dad's suite. The room was a shrine to his legacy. Photos of Veronica at galas, her awards gleaming on the walls. A single frame held my graduation picture, tucked in a corner. The safe hid behind a painting of Kane's first project. I entered my birthday, February 14th, 69, and the door clicked open. Inside were folders meticulously labeled, and a USB drive with a note. Security footage, my office, September 15th, 3 days before my death. I plugged it into my laptop. The video showed Dad at his desk, weary but resolute. Veronica burst in, furious. You can't do this, she shouted. I made this company what it is. You built it on lies, Dad replied. Corruption and bribes. Those Westfield families deserve justice. Justice, she sneered. Where was your justice when we were broke, cutting corners to survive? I was wrong, Dad said heavily. But this ends now. Tomorrow I'm going to the board. No, you won't, Veronica said, her voice ice. Take your heart medication and go home. And if you threaten this company again, remember, accidents happen in construction. The screen went black. Tears streamed down my face. This wasn't just corruption, it was murder. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Parking garage, level B2, 10 minutes. Come alone. It screamed trap, but I had to know. I copied the USB, hiding one in my graduation frame, and headed down. Mom emerged from the shadows. I've been watching the security feeds, she said. I knew you'd come to the safe. Did you know? I choked out. About Veronica? About Dad? Her face crumpled. I suspected. The night before he died, he switched his medication. He told me to give you that letter if anything happened. Before I could respond, Veronica's voice cut through the garage. Well, isn't this cozy? She stepped forward, flanked by 2 burly men. I warned you, Emily. Now you forced my hand. Like you forced Dad's? I shot back. What did you do, swap his pills? Her smile was frigid. Prove it. Oh, I can, I said. The evidence is with the FBI, Dad's files, the video. Everything. Her face drained of color. You're bluffing. Am I? Our phones buzzed, news alerts. Kane Development under federal investigation. I met the feds an hour ago. They're upstairs now, seizing everything. It's over, Veronica. Sirens wailed. Her thugs vanished. She turned to flee, but Mom's voice stopped her. Enough. My husband's dead because of you. Face it. Federal agents flooded in, led by Agent Maria Ruiz, Daniel's daughter. They cuffed Veronica as she glared at me, her empire crumbling. Weeks later, headlines screamed. Kane CEO charged with fraud, murder. The company dissolved, its assets seized. The Westfield families finally avenged. Mom and I left the city, settling near my school. I kept teaching, finding peace in simplicity. A year on, I visited Dad's grave, placing a rose on his stone. I did it, Dad, I whispered. I made it right. The Kane name was tarnished, our wealth gone, but the truth had prevailed. A legacy worth more than gold. Veronica rots in prison, serving life. Mom visits her, I don't. Some sins can't be forgiven. When people ask about the scandal, I tell them of a father's courage, entrusting his quiet daughter with a truth that destroyed an empire and redeemed his soul.